Hey, I'm Forrest Campbell. I'm 48 years old. I am a husband, father. I had a spinal cord injury in March of 2015, and I sustained a broken neck at the C6-7 level. Well, downhill skiing, actually, one of my ex-favorite sports. Yeah, I've got two sons, 17 and 14. Lovely wife, Cassie, who's an amazing person. And yeah, that's Forrest.
For the people who are listening through our podcast, we're doing a Have the Nerve short series where we've got a From the Internet, Get to Know Your Body, and then something to think about. So today we're joined by Forrest. We're going to be talking about a conversation that you and I had very briefly before we actually got onto the recording, the importance of carers that are actually properly supported when their spouses, partners, whoever sustain a spinal cord injury. From your perspective, what was your experience as somebody who was watching their wife become their carer at the same time, and how was the support for her?
Well, I mean, it was, when I had my accident, it was completely life-changing for our whole family. I went from being the main breadwinner in the family. As I used to be an electrician by trade, so I was running my own company, working, 5-6 days a week, being active with the children, getting out, doing things all the time, and having that physical presence around the house. After my injury, obviously, that ceased, and that landed all on pretty much my wife's shoulders, especially all the physical stuff around the house. I mean, we were living in Canada at the time, so shoveling snow, anything like that. Luckily, we had really good neighbors that came and helped us out, but what really I saw was one of the biggest downfalls is, as people with injuries, we are given an incredible amount of supports pre or post injury. Physios, occupational therapists, doctors, anybody that you need, they're right there. And I really found that I saw a huge gap in the support for the family of people who've had spinal cord injuries. It's taken a few years, probably maybe even longer, to actually be able to pull my head out and realize that there was so much effort put in by family, and they never had the support I did. They were supported themselves. And I feel like there's a gap in the system there where family, even friends, of people with spinal cord injury, traumatic injuries, have some support.
Because you're entering into a whole new life, right? And so you're talking about how your wife is shoveling snow out the front of your house and taking on a lot of the physical stuff that you were taking on. Was there anything actually on offer at the time?
Well, when I had my injury, I was in Canada, skiing there, and when I was helicoptered off the ski hill to a local hospital, and then from there ambulanced to a major center where I had all my surgeries and everything. But there really wasn't anything to help with the family. Like, there's no psychology. There's no, there were some people there that were, quote unquote, supposed to support. But their idea of support was, bringing in a shitty cup of coffee and going, here you go, and walking out the door. There wasn't really any true support where they felt comfortable, or peer support even, like other people that had been in the same situation. There just wasn't anything. And I saw my wife slowly but surely become just really, really upset. She just didn't have the support there that she needed. And neither did my kids. Like the two boys, they were just as, they were so young. Like my youngest was probably 5 when that happened. And it was really hard on him because he didn't understand why Dad couldn't go out and go biking with him anymore, or take him to the hockey rink and skate around. Like, they didn't understand, and there was nobody there to help them. And now, years down the road, once, you're able to actually have a real conversation with your children, there's all these gaps that they bring up, and it's just like, why wasn't there something there for them?
Did your wife and yourself have a conversation about, like a frank conversation about the struggles, and like did you go and try and find people in similar situations or anything like that, independent of any, doctor or whatever trying to help you?
I mean, there is a peer community of, people with spinal cord injuries in Canada as well, similar to the Spinal Cord Injuries Australia here. There's always, one or two people that you can talk to, other family members that have had similar situations. But I mean, it's always a little bit different. Like every situation is going to be a bit different. So some of the people that I was in my rehab center with one was a young guy. He was only 18 at the time. So it wasn't the same. We became friends with his mom and dad. But it wasn't the same, situation where it's, a husband and now this wife has been sort of left to fend for everybody in the family, and she really took it on the chin and made it so that nothing happened, which is absolutely commendable. Like, she worked her butt off for that many years and still does to this day. But I think having some sort of structure there for people, the family, would have been really helpful looking back in the past. And I still see it today. There's a huge gap in the care for people about, in family of people with spinal cord injury.
There are millions of unpaid carers in Australia. And by unpaid carers, they can be family members, they can be people who aren't formally paid for the care work that they do because it's family related, usually. There's a lot of people that will suggest things like maybe you can go to a group online, or maybe there's something online. Did you and your family try to find a community online? And if so, how good was it? And what were your thoughts?
Well, when we were in North America, my wife did find a bit of a community online, and it was horrible. It was horrible. They just peg-holed themselves into, being this care person, and that's what everything is about. And the individual is lost. Do you know what I mean? Like, so she did reach out to that group of people, and it wasn't the right place for her. She didn't feel comfortable because they had different views on what their life was going to look like. They were in it for the long run. They didn't care, and they would sacrifice their own personalities and selves to be the wife, and that's what the T-shirt was, the wife. And so it wasn't supportive. There really wasn't anything else like mainstream. Like, everything else was like, oh, go see your GP. He'll get you set up with a psychologist. But at that, you go see your GP and you get this random psychologist that has no idea. It became really frustrating because she would go and she'd see somebody or a peer mentor or something, and she'd come back and go, they have no idea what I'm talking about. There's no commonality. There's no lived experience, I guess would be the word. So when we moved to Australia in 2019, she did actually reach out to Spinal Cord Injuries Australia, looking for unpaid care support. There really wasn't anything there either. Unfortunately, there is a bit of a gap there as well. I mean, there's lots of great services for people with physical disability through Spinal Cord Injuries Australia. And I know that there's the intention to have that sort of service there, but it just hasn't come to something that's tangible yet.
When I think about your story, a couple of things here. So, one, the psychological support that was provided for your wife, it wasn't like the psychologist really had that experience, so it was based on something they weren't really experienced in. And then when you're trying to look for a community that's even online, you come up against either the community is really hard to find, or the community that is already there, the entire identity. It didn't seem like it was about, hey, I am the wife or a girlfriend of somebody with a disability, and I am also this person, this person, this person, this person. So, whatever kind of identity that she has was almost like they didn't want to talk about it.
Like, I mean, when we were in the rehab facility, there was psychology. There was a psychologist. Um, and she came in and um, saw us while we were together in the rehab facility. Um, and literally, it was like she jumped up and ran away, and we never saw her again. And we were like, well, we're just expressing our, our concerns.
Was it too real for
Oh,
her?
much too real. It was like,
Oh.
like we really had to question the managerial part of that rehab facility, because we're like, why do you have a psychologist that has no backbone? You know what I mean? Like, really? Like, she was this lady that did not expect, us to actually, give her the real deal and not just like sugarcoat everything. So that was unfortunate for sure there. It is a massive change in lifestyle, having somebody in your family become injured and have a spinal cord injury. But I don't think that should peg-hole you into automatically being the wife or the carer or anything like that. Luckily here in Australia with the NDIS system, we were able to get care to come in and take that pressure off. But the only problem being is now that leaves this gap in my wife's life, where she's been that full-time steady person in my life as the unpaid carer. And now she's like, well, what do I do? So that's the next stage where, again, there could be some support from other people to go, okay, so what do I do now? Now that everything is settled out, like, how do I find myself again? Like, because that's what it is. It's when people always have to have, themselves as well as, talking and dealing with family members as well. Like, you can't just have no self. I see a lot of times wives or girlfriends or of people with spinal cord injury, they become so involved that they don't have their own life anymore, life outside of injury, which is super important and needs to be encouraged. And I think by having a group of folks out there, of spouses or family, even like good friends, like I've, some place where they can go and just ask a few questions where they're not, when people are going, well, I don't understand, would be so helpful. So actually, some good news is throughout these conversations, my wife is actually starting up a bit of a website space for folks to just jump on a website, be able to ask questions, and have non-judgmental answers put back towards them, and just being there as peer support, purely peer support from lived experience, not from a doctor's point of view, not from anybody else's point of view, just from lived experience.
Well, it's got to be weird, right? So if you're a partner of somebody who has just sustained a disability and you love them, there are days where it's going to be low. The person you're talking to is the person that you live with. So, like, I completely understand if there are people out there who have, who feel like they have no choice but to offload their feelings onto the person that they are caring for, and then you as the person who's being looked after feels, well, maybe it's just me or a select group, but I feel guilt.
100%, because they don't have anybody else to talk to. We're partners in life. We've made that commitment to each other. And when there's nobody out there, that conversation goes in between each other. So what happens then is, guilt, resentment, all of those sort of things start to happen, because there's no place for the spouse to, talk to somebody about this, get it off their chest, make them feel like there's somebody else that's out there listening. It needs to be, and it doesn't even have to be a psychologist, it's just somebody to listen to them with a similar background, similar knowledge, simple, like empathy. Just having.
Sometimes you don't need solutions.
No, you just need somebody to listen to you and tell you that, things are going to be okay, and you're not the only one going through this process. Because I think that was one thing with my wife, is she was like, am I the only one going through this? Because she had such a hard time finding anybody else in similar situations that that it was really difficult for her. So she felt she was very isolated. It's been hard to see her struggle with that over the years, for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, even from a carer perspective of somebody who is any family member at all in any situation, you know, the pressure on you to be able to take on everything becomes so real, and you get in your head so severely. It wouldn't surprise me if even if you are a superhero and you're doing everything you can for everybody in your wife's situation. It's you, your two sons, it's her, and it's the house, and it's like working, and it's all this other stuff, right? For a lot of people, it could be that they feel like they're not doing enough when they're already doing heaps, if not more.
Well, the list never ends, right?
Yeah, the list never ends.
And so she's constantly, try to paint the house and, cook dinner for the kids and myself as well, because I do need a bit of a hand when it comes to that sort of things. And it gets overwhelming for her. It just gets to the point where, there's so many things that she sees around that need to be done. It turns into an overwhelm, and things it'll end up making her shut down. I think what should have happened is there should have been someone when we got to the hospital in Calgary. That's where it was after the accident and the long, crazy ambulance ride in there. It would have been really nice to actually have like a support team for family already set up, briefed, ready to go. Rather than having somebody who was on call, came in, because we showed up there late at night with the ambulance. This peer support person or support person came in. It was 2 a.m. They didn't want to be there. They offered my wife a cup of black coffee from powdered coffee. And they should have had somebody there that was like on board. Do you know what I mean? Like that had some sort of actual want to be there, or, care, I think is what it was. And I think it was really just a lack of knowledge on everybody's part, what is actually happening. Like, and then once we made it from like acute, from like ICU, intensive care, into, more the rehab facility, we were actually hoping that, they'd have internal psychology and a team of other people that we could reach out to get tricks and tips and, things like that to make the transition a little bit more easy. And there wasn't anything there. They hadn't even thought about it. And so in a perfect world, having that involved in the rehab situation would be incredibly good. Because a lot of that support in the rehab is all about the injured person, as I was saying earlier. So at the same time as, the injured person is getting all the support they need, the family needs it just as much.